Okay, thanks.
It's uploading. So
Okay.
do you guys see anything?
We do now. It's sideways.
Oh, it's not supposed to do that. View, rotate right.
There you go. Good.
View, full screen. All right. Okay. Does that look kind of more reasonable now?
Yes, and David, is there any sound that you're going to be presenting as well with this?
No, I didn't have time. I was hoping to make a little movie, but
Okay.
that'll be for the next one. I'll have the animated flights, and you'll be able to hear the noise from the noise monitor and watch the little graph as it charts it. But I don't have that ready for this one.
Okay. Well, good enough. Carry on.
Yeah. Sorry, its next page is not moving on. Oh, sorry, it looks like I'm gonna have to rotate every single one.
Could be.
If you wish, David, I could share my screen and you could talk. I could share.
Yeah, I mailed you the deck.
Yes, you did. I
wanna
have
do
it.
that? All right.
So how about if you unshare, you stop sharing,
Yeah.
and I will share it.
Yeah. Sorry. Trying to unshare here. Cancel. Well. Okay, am I unshared now?
I believe so.
Wait, stop sharing. Oh.
Okay. All right, can you see it?
Yes.
Very good.
Okay, so you just want to go to the next one. You might, if max, I don't know if you can maximize. When we get to some of them, you might want to try to do full screen.
Okay, well, I could try that now. How's that?
Okay, it's better. Okay. All right, so the topics are the noise monitor status, which is kind of a really big thing on the island. It's a major development. The port's sustainable airport master plan, which is looking forward 10 plus years and is including a federal environmental assessment and a state environmental impact statement. And it's a really important opportunity to get legally binding environmental statements done. Flight path changes. Several people have asked me beyond just the next gen ones, especially some departures in South Vashon. And so I just wanted to show some graphs of that so you can see those changes. And then just remind people that if you're interested in aviation noise issues, to just contact me, david@vifs.org, so that you can be included in the next meeting. Okay, so next. So if the monitor was installed by the port and officially came online in March, it was, rather than being in Winghaven Park proper, for a variety of reasons, it was situated on a neighbor, John and Shelley actually, right next to Winghaven. And one of the unfortunate things, it was actually, instead of being set back from a bluff, it was kind of right on a bluff. And so it picks up a background of waves crashing kind of all the time. It turns out, mathematically, because of the way logarithmic calculations work, it has the impact of, in the middle of the night, the floor, rather than being like 25 decibels, is more like 30 decibels, which is kind of too bad. And it's not as dramatic watching the swings. However, because large values predominate in logarithms, it doesn't actually have much of a difference in the numbers generated. But it would have been better to set that back from the bluff so that it would have blocked the noise from the the waves crashing. If we get a permanent one in Winghaven Park, that would clearly be what we'd want to do. Okay, next. This is the port's public view site. This is how you can look at the noise monitor output in real time. This is one that I took last month, which was particularly noticeable because it was an MD-80, which is an older aircraft at 4,000 and some odd feet, I think at 4 o'clock in the morning, which was very loud, which is why it's like 70 some decibels. And you can watch this, and it gives you stats on all the flights that are going over the monitor, or flights in general. I mean, and this is just our monitor, but you can zoom back and see all the ports, whole monitor systems. And there's instructions here for how to get to that by clicking on ports, starting at portseattle.org, and then various boxes that you click through in order to finally get to this public view site, which is pretty cool. You can actually do a lot of, you can also go back in history. So you can say that I want to look at what, if you heard a really noisy flight, say at 10 o'clock this morning, you can actually go back and look at 10 o'clock and see what it was. So it's a very useful site. It's, in that way, it's more useful than a lot of the commercial ones. That's the next. The way the data is presented by the port is via what's called a Tableau site. Tableau is a local company that does graphical data aggregation, and that's the company they use to actually present the data. You can get either a listing of individual events, which are presented in terms of SEL, which is sound exposure level, which is a measure of how loud each event is. And then they also provide aggregate per day of how much the total noise is, what's called LEQ, which is level equivalent. And then by public records request, you can actually get the raw second-by-second noise monitor data, which was extremely important and was a win that we got kind of at the last minute, and it was very important for reasons that will come. I'll touch here in just a couple bullet points. The upper level numbers, which are the kind of the how loud each overflight is, are probably pretty accurate. And again, it's because of the logarithmic nature of these calculations. That even though you hear like an aircraft event may take a minute or 90 seconds even from when you first hear it until it finally basically fades from view, in terms of computing this total energy of the overflight event, all that really matters is just a few seconds on either side of the peak, which actually goes to point why this isn't a very useful metric for how it affects you personally, because it could be very distracting for the entire 90 seconds that it kind of is overwhelming the other noises of nature. But in terms of computing that total energy, it's really just that narrow few seconds that counts. The problem is when they then compute the community noise energy, they literally take the inverse of all the set of the noise events. So the net result is that it ends up including the community noise level, ends up including a lot of the plane noise outside of that narrow envelope per overflight. And there's another method of analysis that can be done called floating threshold analysis, which is more expensive, but you can actually then go and actually tailor each envelope to each overflight event, and you can get much better numbers for community noise. And because we have the second-by-second data, we can go back and do that. And I've been trying to find, actually I asked the ports vendor if they'd want to do it for us, and they weren't willing to have VIFS hire them to do that, but that's one of our projects that we're working on. The other limitation of noise monitors is that when you're looking at this number in real time, what you realize is wind, rain, and bird singing are the top 3 noise events when it's not an airplane. Now, I don't think wind, rain, and bird singing are noise, but the noise monitor doesn't know the difference. It's just sound is sound is sound. So it's unfortunate that what is like traffic noise in Seattle becomes our bird singing are equated to that. But that's just the nature of noise monitoring, unfortunately. Okay, do you want to go to the next one? Hello?
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, Diane. I should practice with WebEx in the future so I can get this done myself. Okay, the Sustainable Sustainable Airport Master Plan has been many years in the making. I was derailed like everything else by COVID. It's important because it has 2 legally binding environmental assessments. One is environmental assessment, which is a federal one, which is actually more important, even though usually an EIS is a more thorough review, but that's a state level. And for the FAA, It's the EA that counts. We had good representation in the scoping process, and right now, in terms of people reaching out to the port complaining about noise, Vashon is very overrepresented in that, as I'll see in the next slide. But it's possible that we may not be included, and that's why we went to this meeting on August 25th, and we had a very most of the maybe 80% of the public commenters were from Vashon. Really trying to emphasize the importance of that Vashon be included in these environmental studies. Oh, sorry, next. This is a graph that the port puts out on a monthly basis. This is for August, and it shows the complaint trends. And so the blue bars are the total number of complaints per month, and then the orange bars are the number of unique households. August is actually a low complaint month for Vashon because we have what's called north flow often, which reduces the number of overflights by about a factor of 3. And quickly, the north flow and south flow, those terms, which I use and the port uses as well, that's the flow over the airport, not over Vashon. Arrivals over Vashon will be going in the opposite direction. It's before they make a U-turn to land. And so that's important to not get confused by that. So when I say north flow, that means planes that are actually flying south over Vashon. And in the summer months, we have a lot of north flow, so we have less noise. So these graphs are actually even more weighted towards Vashon in the off months. But as you can see, yes, the city of Seattle has 30% more unique households complaining, but Seattle is much larger than Vashon, population-wise. There's another graph by zip code, which is even more dramatic, but I included this one. Anyway, so it shows just one more reason why Vashon really needs to be included in this port sustainable airport master plan. Next. Another thing that impacts people on East Maury Island is just kind of the background din of airport operations, which are reverse thrusters, power-ups, and things which immediate neighbors of the airport can hear. And East Maury is actually close enough to the airport, and traveling over the water, depending on atmospheric conditions, it can actually be heard relatively well. They're doing a kind of a comprehensive study of the noise from these airport ground operations and looking at potential mitigations. They can build barriers where they do engine run-up testing to try to block some of the noise. And this is ongoing. It started just before, actually the date there, October 23rd, 2019 is when it took off, and then COVID kind of shut it all down. And they just started bringing that up again in the last 2 or 3 months. And there's a web link there if you want to read more about it, if you're impacted by actual ground noise from the airport. Okay, next. And people in the South Vashon Island have come and asked me, like, who have lived there for 20 or 30 years, and they never really had so much traffic before. Airports do what's called a Part 150 study around every 10 years. And on the left there is from a study in 2002. And what's actually more useful about that one than its current state is that it includes the altitudes. And it's really difficult to see on this because it's from an older document, but you can kind of see the bulge of Maury on the south, on the bottom of that graph on the left. And that kind of broad swath are all the ones which are now ultra focused in a 100-yard wide track. But what you'll see there in the south that's interesting is that flights that used to go to Asia and Alaska, when they took off from the airport, they flew over the water between Vashon and Tacoma. Well, over the last 20 years, and especially recently, they've made this sharp right turn, and they just turn right over Vashon now. And this didn't used to happen. They used to fly over the water. So this is a real concern, and people have approached me, and when they talk to the FAA, they tell them they're imagining it. There's been no change. And what's unique about this was a study done by the airport, and it really documents that, yes, there has been a change. And this is useful because those colors on the left are altitudes. And it also shows that not only did the port ultra focus these arrivals flying north over the island, which are actually south flow, from many miles wide into a 100-yard track, they lowered them about 2,000 feet at the same time, which is what has caused such a major impact to people that are near that ultra focused line. And this was supposed to be a very small, short, concise update. And so that's it for this short update. I hope I didn't take too much longer than 10 minutes. Tried to be quick.
You did fine. Thank you very much.
And if there's questions, if there's time, I can take questions, or I can wait till the end if you want.
If there are some questions, feel free. Take them now.
Okay. Someone asked, is the right turn to save fuel? It's a good thing for the environment. Those on departures, these are called PBN, they're performance-based navigation. Those do save a small amount of fuel. It's a very small amount of simply reducing a single flight would save much more. But yeah, those sharp turns are designed to optimize the departures. Ironically, on the arrivals, there was the same intention, but because of conflicts with traffic from the east, it actually burns more fuel and creates more greenhouse gases, which is really disappointing.
Anything else? Any other questions for David?
With a whole bunch coming in on the chat.
Okay.
You know, I'm gonna review those while we're going on, and I'll respond in the chat rather than trying to read them and answer them now, so we can continue
Okay.
on with the rest of the topics.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, so then the next item on our agenda is, well, do we have any other committee updates? I know that the Affordable Housing Committee met, and unfortunately, our chair has decided to resign, and so we are looking to replace her in our leadership for the Affordable Housing Committee. There are some real opportunities that are, you know, opening up. One is the K2 building may prove to be an opportunity, but then we have the Vashon Community Care Center, and we'll be hearing from them later on in this meeting. So, you know, over the years, affordable housing has been addressed opportunistically. And so I think when you have opportunities, you just have to jump at them, and we'll see what we can do with this. In terms of the board, you know, it was pretty stable meeting. What we do as a board is we're going over the previous month's meeting and figuring out what it is we need to do to address it, and then looking to plan the next month's meeting. So, you know, people are welcome to come and listen to the board meetings. We don't take a lot of participation from the people who are not board members, but you know, anyone that wants to sit in on a board meeting, really feel free. And we have been recording these on WebEx, so that's another way, if you're interested in these board meetings, to see what's going on. Now, let's see. The next item on the agenda, and we're moving quickly this evening, which is good, is we're going to get an update from John Taylor, who's the director of the Department of Local Services, and he's basically the person who is most connected to Vashon Island, his work. So John, if you could, you know, fill us in.
David, thanks. I'm going to offer a friendly amendment to that statement. Bong Santo Domingo,
Oh,
who is with
okay.
us, is, I would say, the most connected to Vashon.
This is true. My apologies.
And Maury Island. Let us not forget Maury Island.
That's right.
They are connected but separate. I myself have been corrected by people on both islands over the years. John Taylor, Director of the Department of Local Services. For new attendees, Department of Local Services was created about 3 years ago now. I can't even believe it's been that long. essentially to act as sort of a clearinghouse for county services in unincorporated King County. So we are like your municipal government for unincorporated King County and for Vashon and Bong Santo Domingo. If I was the city manager, he would be the assistant city manager for Vashon-Maury. So just know Bong and reach out to him if there's anything that's going on where you need assistance. David asked me, I'm going to be coming to these meetings on a regular cadence, and I'm going to be just giving kind of an overview of things that are happening. I don't have a PowerPoint or anything. I'm just going to, kind of click off a list of a few things that I'm aware of, some that are macro issues in the county and more that are micro issues for Vashon. First and foremost, I don't think anyone who owns a radio or reads a newspaper is unaware that we are in the middle of a fairly significant surge in COVID cases. And I would just say to you, the data we're seeing is disconcerting. We're having about 550 cases, new cases per day on average. That is high. That is right up there with what we've seen at peaks, when there were no vaccines. 95+% of cases that are being recorded are people who are unvaccinated. And the really significant, the hospitalizations, which are up significantly, are among people who are unvaccinated. So personal choice, but just a public service announcement. Think about those numbers and think about whether you want to get vaccinated or not. We are seeing an average of about 3 deaths per day right now, which is high. And we are beginning to see bed and staffing issues in all hospitals, not just hotspots where there are a lot of cases, but we are now beginning to see shortages of bed and staffing in all hospitals in King County. And on a rather morbid note, we are beginning to see issues with morgue capacity at all the hospitals and mortuaries and the King County Medical Examiner's Office. And we're rethinking how to approach those to manage the number of people we're seeing who are passing away. So just be advised all of that. I think that everyone is aware that King County has mandated vaccines for all of our employees. And that will take effect on October 18th. We're seeing pretty high vaccination rates in our department. And we're seeing a vaccination rate so far of about 87% across the county. I think we're going to get to 100%. There are some folks who have applied for medical or religious waivers, and we're processing those. And I think the state is doing similar things, and lots of other jurisdictions are doing similar things. And then I think people heard this week that the executive announced that we're going to have a vaccine verification program for restaurant, bars, and event spaces. So just be advised, that's all happening. And I think as we have from the very beginning of this thing, we're taking all the steps we can to try to mute the spread of this pandemic and keep people safe in the county. And I would say, based on my travels over the last sort of during the summer, I was out and about a lot. We're doing a good job here in King County. On a lighter note, just a reminder that Vashon has a van program. We have a van coordinator. And I'm going to put a link to the info on that in the chat. We have a lovely woman, Megan Lockhart, who runs that van. She is available to pick people up and take them wherever it is they might want to go. And I'm very slowly putting that in the chat. So you can find that there. Great program funded by King County Metro. You are one of the few areas that has that dedicated service. Skyway just got one. So it's a great thing for folks who may not have access to a vehicle or not be able to drive and to the market or other places. So, if you're not one of those people, think about people who might need that service and take advantage of it. One of the things that we've done during the COVID-19 pandemic with federal assistance we've gotten is launch small business grant programs to keep small businesses that were suffering COVID-related losses in business. So last year we did 2 grant rounds for grants of $5,000, and we had like 500-ish participants in that program. This year, we launched another program for small businesses with grants up to $25,000. And we had exactly 513 participants in that program. Of those, 77 of them are on Vashon. So 77 of your friends and neighbors on Vashon were able to access that funding. And I can tell you from talking to some of the businesses who received last year's money, it was existential for them. They would have gone out of business, but for that infusion of cash to make lease payments or whatever it might be. And I'm sure that's going to be the same thing with this most current grant round. So we worked with and continue to work with Comunidad de Vashon and the Vashon Chamber on that program. We'll continue to work with them as things move forward. Knock on wood, we are near the end of this rather tumultuous time we've all been going through. That is my most profound hope for all of us. So, but we stand ready to help whatever happens. And we're always trying to think of things we can do to make things better. We've done a few things on the island during the course of this pandemic. We've helped with getting PPP out. That's, masks and hand sanitizer and stuff. To the fire district and others, Bong's been great doing that. We've worked with Hillary Emmer, who's on the call, setting up a service for people who are living in RVs who can't afford to get off the island to have their tanks pumped out so they don't dump them down storm drains. Whatever people bring to us, we're generally a yes and kind of operation. If you have an idea, we're going to try to do it to the best of our ability. Just a reminder, I'm going to put another link in the chat. We have been and continue to gather input from all of you on what the community needs are for Vashon. And that is something that we call a community needs list. Link is right there, and that will take you to a survey. It says it's closed, but we're still taking input. So if you have things that you think need doing on Vashon, go to that link and you can still make comments, and we will still take them and add them to the community needs list for Vashon. That document is going to be prioritized with you, with the community, and it will be something that all departments in the county have to react to during the next biennial budget process. So when they write their budget proposal, they will have to speak to that community needs list and how they are meeting the needs of unincorporated King County in Vashon, the Snoqualmie Valley, the Enumclaw Plateau, the Green River Valley, wherever it might be. It's something that we think is going to really, and already has been changing the dynamic on how the larger county treats unincorporated King County, unincorporated parts of King County. One of the first things that we started working on when we came in, the council saw it, liked it, and they've integrated into sub-area planning. So when the Vashon sub-area plan gets updated, this will be updated in concert with it. But it's a living document, and we keep adding to it every year anyway. So go take a look. If you have thoughts, make comments, because that's how we know what you want. Lastly, because I know that my buddy Hillary Emmer is here, and I have an email from her that I've not yet responded to. The pedestrian light at the Senior Center Crosswalk is going to be installed at the end of the month. I don't have an exact date, but I checked with Roads Maintenance, and it's on their roster, and they've committed to having it installed by the end of the month. So since it's the 20th, that means within the next 10 days. And if it's not there, please feel free to contact me. Lots of other stuff going on. I know you've got Sarah Brandt here to talk about land acquisitions. But, there's no one in the Department of Local Services that's feeding pigeons in the park. Everybody is flat out right now trying to respond to everything that's going on. So happy to field questions from anybody. And if people have comments or barbed remarks, I will take those as well. I'm an equal opportunity commenter.
Okay.
John, this is
Yeah.
Hillary. Yes, thank you so much, because I did email you a while ago, and we will be looking for that pedestrian crossing in front of the senior center. So I appreciate you telling me it will be there in 10 days. That's wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? I did want, oh, go ahead. Who is speaking? Okay. I did want to follow up with the trash pickup in downtown Vashon, or uptown Vashon as it's called. And, you know, I know we had Strawberry Festival, we had Labor Day, we've had some big tourist turnouts. And every time I see all these people on the street and I look around and there are no trash cans. So I'm just wondering why the streets don't get totally littered. Perhaps people are more conscientious, but it's a real need on the island. And I was wondering if we can work with the local trash pickup to maybe have a contract farmed out to them.
Be happy to help you facilitate that. It's one of my, not many people know this, but before I came to King County, I spent several years working in the solid waste industry. So I can really bore people to tears with my deep knowledge of garbage and garbage collection. It's a peculiarity of the unincorporated area that you do not have contracts with your solid waste companies. They have a perpetual right to collect garbage that was granted to them by the legislature. And the local jurisdiction, in this case, King County, doesn't have any control over the dimensions of that solid waste pickup. If you were in a city, they would have a contract with the solid waste company that does the collection, and they would build into that contract things like street litter collection, like you see in Seattle. So that's part of the contract that the city of Seattle has with their two big companies that do all the solid waste collection. And they just bake that into the rate for what people pay at their houses for solid waste pickup. We don't have that in King County. We have been able to, in a couple of circumstances, find ways to get street litter cans out. So we have them in White Center because that was a real need. And David, exactly the way you described it, it's sort of a side contract. So happy to work with you on that. The other bit of good news is we will be executing a contract this week, I hope, with, or not executing, we'll be putting out an RFP, a request for proposals, so that we can extend a service that we have in White Center and Skyway to Vashon and a couple of other parts of unincorporated King County, where we come out on a weekly basis and do litter collection in the commercial districts. So keep an eye out for that. Probably won't start for another month or a month and a half, but Vashon is absolutely one of the places we're going to target. It's called Uplift Northwest runs the service that we call the Conservation Corps, and it's just a crew that comes out and they will do graffiti removal, litter control, and anything else that we see in the business district that needs attention. So keep looking for that. And I like your cat, David.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah.
So let's connect offline and we can think about a strategy for contacting your solid waste company.
That's good. Another issue that has come up with the closing of the community care center, I know a number of people are raising the issue of converting it to affordable housing on Vashon. We don't know, I don't know the full dimensions of the issue at this point, but is that something, you know, the county has purchased some hotels in order to put up homeless people. Is that something that the county would be willing to put funding into? Because we do have a real affordable housing crisis on the island, where one of the reasons the community care center is closing is that they don't have workers who can afford to live here.
Happy to sort of broach that topic with Department of Community and Human Services. I believe that there's already been some conversation with Councilmember McDermott's office on this topic, based on just email traffic I've seen.
Okay.
So, but happy to wade into it more. And there's a question, you know, does King County view this as a crisis? I think it's a significant loss for the community. There's no question about that. And how we respond to it is really the question. And I know that there are folks in Department of Community and Human Services who are acutely aware of it. So let me follow up with them.
Okay, great. Other questions? Well, let's see.
There's some back and forth in the chat, but I think it is regarding the noise pollution and people representing their East Coast bona fides. New Jersey, born and raised, so equally thick skin. Feel free.
Okay.
All right, if nothing else from me, I'm going to yield my time to my colleague from Department of Natural Resources and Parks.
Great, and thanks for helping having her come over here.
I had zero to do with it, but I appreciate you thinking that I had any kind of ability to impact that.
Okay.
I know Sarah, and she's her own person, so it's good to see her. All right, thanks everybody. Good to see everyone.
And thanks for joining us again.
Always a pleasure.
All right. So I'd like to introduce Sarah Brandt from King County Open Space regarding proposed additions for Vashon-Maury Island. And thank you for joining us. Sarah's on mute. Okay, still on mute. Nick, can you take Sarah off mute?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Oh, you can, okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm having a little trouble with my audio tonight.
Not
Well, thanks for allowing me to be here. And I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
Here it comes. Hopefully folks can see that. Folks able to see? There it is. Folks can see? Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, this is a little technically challenged. I'm here with my colleague, Dave Kimmett, who also knows a lot more about Vashon Island, perhaps than I do. But we're here to talk about the Open Space Charter. I am going to mute my... Can folks still hear me now?
We can hear you.
But we can't. I'm having an echoing problem. Okay, here we go. So, Open Space Charter. I have perhaps too many slides for the 10 minutes you've allocated to me, but I'll do my best. Maybe say fewer words than are on my slide, knowing that you have these slides and can take a look at them after I'm done for more details. So the Open Space Charter, we're going to give you a little bit of history about what this thing is, and then
Sarah, I don't see the slides.
The screen.
Okay. Trying again. How about there?
Not yet.
No, is it possible to send the slides over to either Diane? Yeah, probably to Diane, and she could
Diane
share
should
them.
have them.
Yes, I have them. I will share
Okay.
my screen and get them.
Okay, I apologize.
No problem.
So let me just give you a summary while Diane pulls those up to let you know what's happening here.
Okay.
The Open Space Charter is an opportunity for us essentially to do an administrative exercise related to adding additional protections to our Open Space Charter amendment. What the amendment does is it gives us an additional level of protection on properties we already own, either in fee or in easement. And so I see the slides are coming, which is great. So in 2009, voters approved by about 80% this charter amendment. And so that gave us the opportunity to identify the properties in our inventory that we wanted to add additional protection to because of their high conservation value. And so next, maybe you can go to a couple more slides down. Anyways, in 2009, that gave us the chance to take a look at our entire inventory, and we identified approximately 155,000 acres in our inventory that we owned both in fee and with conservation easements that we thought deserved this additional level of protection. So if you could go, so there's the codes and the legislation, and one more slide. One more slide, please. Well,
Can you
I'll
go to
keep
the
going.
next? Oh, good. There we go.
There it is. Great. And so the lands that we are generally proposing or thinking about for our open space charter amendment are owned by King County Parks or are in our inventory. And when they are listed under the open space charter, there are no new restrictions or additional costs to us to list under the amendment. But you see in this third bullet here, the additional protection that we're talking about is that if we wanted to do something different than its agreed upon conservation use or surplus property or sell property that's protected by the inventory, we have a high bar to cross. So the council would have to vote by supermajority to allow us to do so. And that is a high bar that we don't want to encounter too often. So we're fairly conservative about what we list. So with the next slide, please, I can show you a rough order of estimate or magnitude for how much land we're proposing with this update. Perfect. And so you see that for 155,000 acres were in our inventory as of 2009. We come back every 5 years and suggest what we've purchased since the last update for inclusion in our inventory. So about 4,000 acres in 2015. And so you see here in 2021, we're coming back with about 2,500 acres that we'd like to propose for this amendment. So the next slide, please. We'll show you by council district, the recommendations. And the code requires us to take a look at these essentially by council district. And you can see down there with McDermott, about 360 acres are proposed in his district. And if you go to the next one, you'll see that the lion's share are in Vashon Island and Maury Island. So there you see, we have about 287 acres that are owned in fee by King County, or 66 acres that we've acquired an easement for, bringing the total to about 350 acres on Vashon and Maury Island that we would like to propose to protect by the open space amendment. And I believe that Diane might have been able to share this map with you, and we're going to dig into the details just a little bit here. But what this shows you is where we are in terms of the status of the amendment. So if it's green, it means it's already protected by the amendment. If it's yellow, it means it's something that we're proposing in this round to include. If it's blue, it means that there's some reason why it didn't qualify or align with the intent of the open space charter. And so those are still in our inventory, still parks, recreational opportunities, or otherwise, but they aren't perfectly aligned with the charter, so we don't list them, given the fact that there might be some complexity. So next slide, please. This just gives you a chance to take a little closer look at some of the yellow properties that we're proposing. And I'm going to share with you at the end of this a link to an interactive mapping tool where you've got some homework if you choose to accept it, and to take a look at these lands on an iMapping tool where you can dig a little deeper into the details. But the next slide, please, will give you a sense of why these properties are proposed. And so with the next slide here, you can see these 4 properties sort of in the middle part of Vashon Island add to important tributaries. They protect forests, passive recreation or trail corridors, salmon-bearing streams and the like. Let's take a look a little further south. With the next slide, please. Thank you. You can see here a few more sites in the south part of Vashon Island and Maury. And if you, the next couple of slides that again, you'll have in materials that Diane provides to you, are the reasons and rationale why we think these qualify for protection under the Open Space Charter Amendment. Again, adding to forested sites, protecting upland forests and trails for recreation, or natural shorelines, a lot of amazing natural shorelines around Vashon that we're trying to protect in Maury Island. Next slide. Perfect. And then those are the kind of round out the additional sites on Vashon-Maury Island where we're proposing to add this additional layer of protection on sites that are already in our inventory. So I'll wrap this up with the next couple of slides to talk to you about the public comment opportunity here. So essentially what you have the opportunity to do is take a look at what's been proposed for including under their charter amendment. You can go to our website, and I'll provide links to that as well, perhaps in the chat, where you can get a little bit more information about the charter amendment itself, a link to a mapping tool, and you can provide comments to this email address. And over the next few weeks, I'll be visiting other councils and hopefully briefing community groups and receiving as much feedback as I can by mid-October. And then by the end of this month and into the end of this year, preparing a package that finalizes our recommendation to council. What the council will do is then hopefully pick up that legislative package and consider approving it in early 2022. And there will be a public hearing opportunity at that point as well. Last slide, please. Actually, there's 2 more slides. Next slide is just my contact information. And then the final slide shows you the web mapping tool where you can actually, from the comfort of your own home, take a look around the entire county, but Vashon in particular, to learn a little bit more about the sites that we're proposing. There it is, perfect. And I apologize for being a bit discombobulated here at the beginning of my remarks for the technology challenges, but if there are questions, I'd be happy to take them here or stay on the chat and respond as you proceed to other items. Are there any questions?
Hmm.
And if not, that is
The
okay.
open space, such as farmland and forest management plans. Do you do any work with the King County Assessor's Office to see how they are assessing these properties? Because I was a little upset with a new formulation that they have for how they reach their assessments on land that is in open space taxation, where they're assigning a higher percentage of the value to houses on that property than to the land itself. So thereby taking away the advantage of having open space taxation. Were you aware of that?
It's not something I'm aware of. Dave, do you have any insight there?
No, I don't. How recent is this, David?
This change was done about 1.5 years ago or so, between 1 year and 2 years ago, that they've taken a different approach to their assessments, where they look at recent sales, they look at comps, and then they assign some kind of a percentage to the house as opposed to the land. And in my case, it was quite skewed.
Well, we do work with folks in our department that work on the current use taxation program, and we can reach out to them to better understand that assessment process. But it's not something that I work on personally. I work on acquisitions, open space acquisitions on Vashon-Maury Island.
Sure. And it's just, I thought that there should be some communication between the two departments, because if the assessor undervalues the land and overvalues the buildings, then it takes away the advantage of putting lands into open space taxation.
Do you, when you say undervalue the land, did the land, is this, you think maybe this is a result of certainly the rise in real estate prices over the last couple of years, and certainly a property that does have a house on it is certainly worth more than just raw land?
Oh, true. But if you looked at my house, you'd say, how could they give it such a high value? So it was shocking, but
and they
go
do.
ahead.
I'm going through this with an owner over in the White Center area. I also work on acquisitions in the North Highline area. And when we did the appraisal on her property, it was well below the assessment. And she was quite upset about that. So she's using our appraisal to challenge her assessment. So there is a challenge process where you can challenge the tax assessment that was completed. That's about as much as I know, having just gone through this process with an individual owner over in the North Highline area.
Okay, just thought I'd bring it up.
But we can reach out to our folks that are in the Department of Natural Resources and Parks that work on current use taxation. They work on getting people enrolled in PBRS, and so we can reach out to them and see what happened or what's possibly changed in that assessment process.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions? And thank you for the work you're doing. Open space is so important to Vashon Island, as you probably know. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. And thanks for coming and sharing with us.
Absolutely. I put in the chat a link to the map and the Open Space Charter webpage, which may tell a more cohesive story than my introduction that wasn't quite as crisp as I would have liked. So thanks very much for your time.
Sure. Okay, the next item on our agenda would be new business, if there is new business at this point. Well, then we could move on to community updates. And we have a community update from Zero Waste Vashon. So Nancy O'Connor, if you could, talk to us.
David, Nancy was having technical difficulties, and she was with her audio, so she's going to have to come another time, I'm afraid.
Oh, that's too bad. All right. Well, we have an open discussion, and is Kim Kambeck here? He wanted to talk about the Quaker Peace Project toward right relations with Native peoples. Kim?
I am here.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's
There you go.
She.
Hi. Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
So Diane's going to share a screen with you with regard to this program.
Okay.
It's coming up.
Here it comes.
So I'll introduce myself. I am new to the island. I've lived here for the last 3 years. My husband and I restored the old Zarth farm on 115th. And I grew up in Tacoma and moved back this way, like I said, just 3 years ago. So I went to school, my formative years in Tacoma. My dad worked for Weyerhaeuser, and then we moved to Oregon, Washington, D.C. I lived on Navajo, and now we're back up here in the Pacific Northwest. And part of my time on Navajo and working with the Indian Child Welfare Act made me aware of the doctrine of discovery. And I am now in a place where working with some retired attorneys from Native American Rights Fund who have put together this peace project with the Quakers in Boulder Valley, Colorado. They have taken the project all over the world, working with Indigenous people and working with the effects of colonization. And I know that much has been done already in Washington State. I know much has been done on Vashon. I'm a member of the Heritage Museum Board, and before every meeting we do the land acknowledgement. And also at the Unitarian Church here on Vashon, we do a land acknowledgement about the Swibosh people and the Coast Salish people. And I just, having had a background in education, I know that many textbooks don't teach anything about doctrine of discovery, or they just kind of brush over it. And then we have Indigenous Peoples Day, and it's a day. And I'd really like to see that our children and our children's children understand that we don't live on land that was unoccupied. We live on land that was previously occupied. And I want people to have the opportunity, if they so choose, to heal, both Native and non-Native. So here you go. Here's what I wrote. And Diane, can you just kind of scroll down or make it bigger or something? I probably should have sent it to you as a PDF. I'm kind of new to this whole deal. But the purpose of the Peace Project is to bring the facilitators to Vashon Island. And we're lucky because we have a trained facilitator that is in Puyallup. He's Toda Odom and Puyallup. Those are the tribes that he is from. And he spends most of his time in Puyallup, but he's also a member of the Presbyterian USA board. And so a quarter of his time is spent in Louisville, Kentucky. But we're lucky because he's trained and he's here. So I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping around, but the goals of the project is to have community-wide involvement, to understand the terra nullius and the fact that the land wasn't empty when the Zarths, who have this farm that I now inhabit, when they homesteaded it, and to involve government, schools, churches, historical societies, artists, and citizens in the programs that are offered by the Peace Project, and then to provide ongoing respect and support for sovereign rights of tribes who call Vashon home. And I really believe that we as a community have an opportunity, be it with letter writing, be it with just supporting people, getting to know our tribal neighbors. The Puyallups just had a tiny house build that my husband and I participated in. And there's just a lot of things that are available to us if we know and we begin to forge those relationships in a more meaningful way. But to have relationships formed, I think we have to look at tribes as just a viable group that are here instead of sort of forgotten Americans. And so I put some resources down here, and in the meeting notes, I hope that you'll just get this as an attachment to your notes, that you can look up some of this information. And yeah, I'm just in the formulating kind of how this is going to all work. The Vashon Island Unitarian Fellowship Social Justice Committee is pretty much on board to help. I have some other individuals that are out there willing to help. I'm working with the museum to see if they would like to help. And in my mind, the way that I see it and the way it's kind of growing is that possibly this spring or next summer, there'd be an opportunity for there to be a weekend where speakers come in, because, you know, we have many lawyers who have argued the Bolt decision It's been argued, I think now 11 times at the Supreme Court. And we have lots of the legal folks around that can talk about sovereignty and fishing rights and land rights. We have people on the other side that are working with Indian child welfare. We have people that understand the sanctity of Turtle Island where we live. And I think if we brought those voices all into one place where the public could have access and talk and learn, and we could forge those relationships, the sovereignty issues that need support of all of us, not just tribes out there trying to prove that they're sovereign and to keep having to go to court over and over and over again. They need the rest of us on board with them. So there you go.
Well, thank you very much. Do we have questions for Kim? Okay, well, we'll keep working on it.
Okay, and I'll stay in touch with you.
That's
Thanks so
good.
much for listening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Let's see. Wendy Kleppa, the executive director of Vashon Community Care, is here and will be talking and taking questions from people in the audience as well. So, Wendy, if you can
I'm
introduce...
not seeing her on the list, and we are running really early.
Yeah.
So she was not expected to come until 8:35, and it's only 8:10. So I think that might be why she's not here.
That could be. That could be. Well, I know that, let's see. Where is it?
Hillary Emmer is here, though, and she might be able to share some thoughts.
Okay.
I think she's still here.
Let's see. And Dave Goebel was going to get back to us on, I think, a few things later in the meeting. So, Dave, did you have something else that you want to share with us?
Well, I've been replying in the chat. People have been asking questions, and so I've been addressing them as they come up. If we have a little time later on, I can go and read some of them.
Well, if you could read them right now, it looks like we have a little time.
Hillary's now here and raising her hand. We should.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Have her say something.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. So we got a couple of programs here. Yeah. Anyway, so as John was talking about, we do have a program for people who are living in RVs or trailers, and once a week, Honey Bucket comes out and will go to people's houses and dump their take their shit, literally. And that they'll only do it once a month. It's a pilot program, and when the $10,000 runs out, right now it's going to go away. So we don't know how long that really lasts, but everyone has to call me, and then I arrange it with Honey Bucket. That's one program. Another program that's just starting out is through IFCH, the Interfaith Council to Prevent Homelessness, and that is called New Vashon Subsidized Rent Program. And so right now I'm sitting on $60,000. I really hope to get another 30, and to start a program that would be able to give people who qualify $500 a month for 1 year. And it's for low-income people, 250% of poverty, pay about 50% of their income in rent. And then we'll have a special people apply. And so they fill out a preliminary application. And if they are in the 1 through 10, which I have money for now, and if it goes to 15, then they'll fill out a more detailed with proof of their income and their expenses. So anyway, anyone who It was in the paper last week. They need to either contact me or Youth and Family Services. And Nydia Segoya at the school has applications and she's on the committee. So the committee is Nydia, Megan Fitzgerald from Youth and Family Services, Elba Osega, who's also works at Family Place for Youth and Family Services, and then me, and I'm the only one who doesn't speak Spanish, but the three of them do. Okay.
Hillary,
Okay.
how many RV residents do we have on Vashon?
So we have about 12, 13 that have contacted me that are being cleaned out once a month. Yeah. So it's, you know, some people, I mean, that we have a lot more homeless, but if you don't, if you're living in, yeah, and they go or they go to where you're hanging out. So, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I'm done. Thank you.
All right. And then Dave Goebel, if you could tell us about some of what discussions you've had.
Yeah. So people asked about what about the military flights? JBLM, a lot, depending where they are in the island, they get some of those overflights. And that's really, military overflights are a completely different beast than dealing with the FAA. Up in the San Juan Islands, there's the what are they called? Anyway, there's some serious problems up there with some very loud aircraft as well on a base that was reactivated. So again, you have the situation where things changed. It's not so much that someone moved next to an active military base that a military base became active all of a sudden. Other people asked about what about our GA airport on the island? Is going to be noise monitoring there? Again, that's not part of the Port of Seattle. GA in general is you know, I hang out with a lot of noise activists from all over the country, so I haven't studied GA issues extensively the way I have with commercial airline issues. But generally, it's more difficult with GA because it's just individual pilots, you know, not flying commercial routes and not all focused on exactly the same path. Though one person I know who lives near GA Airport, where there's a large skydiving operation, just says it's really difficult because of the way the planes fly to get to a high altitude and the repetitive all day long on the same path, and just how the noise they make on that front. Someone else asked about what about toxic emissions? And right now, the one that's the most concerned are what are called ultrafine particles, and they've only recently been studied. But what's kind of dangerous and scary about them is that they're so small they are able to pass the blood-brain barrier seamlessly, and so it's not really understood what long-term effects they have on people's health. It's thought it's probably mainly a problem closer to the ground, though. The way NextGen is over Seattle, all the planes are in 100-yard wide tracks. So laterally, it is if you're literally under the runway right at the airport, but you are several thousand feet higher. The problem is that when you get to ultrafine particles, the physics can become non-intuitive when you get to micro scale. And so I'm not saying that necessarily it's different, but you can actually have a situation where things are unintuitive, for instance, not being deflected by air molecules because they're so small. And I'm not saying that's happening, but it's only now being studied. So it is potentially possible that these particles would not be affected as much by the wind and would simply fall straight down. So if you're under them, you would have a similar impact to being near the airport. But again, those haven't been studied yet. The equipment to measure it is very expensive. You can't use a normal 2.5 PM meter. It's a special distillation process that has to measure it. It's a large financial equipment to try and measure it. There was the general debate about in a way it's a value judgment about is it worth any kind of almost any cost to quality of life people on the ground to save any amount of fuel. So if I can save a little bit of fuel, but it's going to wreck people's lives on the ground in the name of saving fuel, is that worth it? And that's kind of more of a value judgment. Along that same lines, the FAA has had a practice trying to minimize the number of people impacted by aviation noise. And one of the ways they can do that is by simply focusing it all. So yes, you minimize the number of people who are exposed to aviation noise, but at the cost that those who then are, who basically were selected as a sacrifice zone by the FAA, just have tremendous noise. And so the question of whether or not that's fair or not is again a value judgment. So it's not a technical judgment. And there was some debate about that, which as you can imagine is kind of animated, because it's extremely distressing. So if you move to the island specifically to get away from man-made noise, as I did 23 years ago, and you make sure you get enough property so that you're far away from any man-made noise, because you really have a very difficult time emotionally dealing with that, just it's very difficult. And when all of a sudden the FAA decides to plop 250 overflights a day over you, it's very emotionally difficult, and sometimes it's trying to express that without becoming emotional. It can be difficult, and I've had years of practice now, so I'm pretty good at it. But and also I really, because I'm a physics major, I kind of geek out on the technical issues, so that kind of also allows me to engage and kind of insulate my feelings somewhat as well. But anyway, those are philosophical discussions, not technical ones. So that's kind of a summary. If I missed anything, please let me know.
Well, thank you very much, David. Let's see, are there any more new questions?
Wendy has joined us, David.
Oh, great, great. Well, I'd like to introduce Wendy Kleppa, who's the executive director of the Vashon Community Care Center, and talk about the unfortunate closing of that facility, which has been a real boon to the island. Wendy?
Wendy, we can't hear you. Could you check your sound on your computer? You're not muted.
It could be that your computer itself, the sound is going through something different than what you expect it is. If you have a microphone, you could go to your settings and check that.
I'm so sorry. I don't know.
Your volume is just way down. If you could turn up the volume on your mic.
Would.
Okay.
We've lost you.
Don't hear anything.
I heard you just for a little bit there. I don't know what you did, but if you could do it again.
There.
Yes,
That's
more
better.
of that. More.
Heard a little bit.
I don't want to waste your time.
We can hear you. Keep talking.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, speak up. Just speak loud.
Okay. I'm so sorry about that. I'm coming to you all the way from Edmond, so maybe that's our problem. Who knows? My name is Wendy Kleppe, and I'm the Executive Director for Vashon Community Care. I trust that your smiling faces means that you can hear me. So nod your head if you can. Awesome. Thank you. Earlier, a couple of weeks ago, we made the unfortunate announcement that we will be ceasing operations of Vashon Community Care as we know it at the end of the year. This has been a very difficult decision, not only for Transforming Age to come to, but also for obviously the staff, for our residents, and for our family. the human effect of this decision we recognize is enormous and the burden is very heavy. We are focusing all of our energy currently on finding placement for residents that are currently living there. And families are trying to do as best they can to just move forward. I've spent the last 10 days just on the phone with every single family member, just trying to listen, trying to help them find placement. Susan Reamer is on my team. As most of you know, she's the former editor of the Beachcomber, but she's also been assisting with all of our move-ins that we've had for the last year. She's been there a year and a half. And so now her job is focused on helping with outplacement. The three reasons really why we had to come to this decision, the financial impact and the enormous revenue loss that has been incurred since Transforming Age took over the loan and the debt in 2017 has been about $1 million a year. So when you look at that number and really say, you know, is it a fundraising issue? It also is magnified by the fact that we cannot find staff. Only 35% of our staff actually live on the island. As you all know, there's a lot of conversation about workforce housing, affordable housing on the island. And just like all the other businesses on the island, this impacts us significantly. We run a shift 24 hours a day. We provide 24-hour care, which means that I have to have caregivers in the building 24 hours a day. When the ferries are down, it impacts our ability for staff to get on the island. And that makes it very, very difficult. We're constantly running into short shifting, which puts residents at risk for not getting the full care. So that's a huge component. And we have only been running at about 68% occupied for the last 3.5 years. Obviously, COVID has impacted that significantly. We've done a really good job of connecting with the island and connecting with those in need and have moved a lot of families in over the last 2 years since I've been there. It's just not enough. And we just can't move the needle. So we're running, like I said, about 68% occupied on average over the last 3 years. As we were making this decision, I really wanted to incorporate the island and the island voice in how we could move forward with this incredible asset. And so we decided to form a task force of islanders that were well respected, that represented various aspects of the island: social services, real estate, senior services, care services. And so we formed a group of about 12 individuals that have come together a couple of times, and we're just tinkering around with some ideas. Ideas that could benefit the island. Groups are kind of forming from that. They're going back to their boards and their committees. So we're really getting excited about what's coming next with that. A couple of weeks ago, the group decided that we needed to have a project manager. And so we interviewed a couple of people and we chose Tim Johnson, who's on this call with me today. We'll be acting as the project manager liaison between Vashon Community Care, the task force, and then also working with myself and Transforming Age as we just step into a really curious and very meaningful conversation as we take this very seriously about really what does this island need? What does this island want as far as the next rendition of this building? I'd like to invite Tim to say a couple of words if you'd like to.
A couple of words. Hi, Wendy. Yeah, I think you covered it pretty much. We don't have a whole lot of facts right now because we're in the fact gathering mode. The phases of grief are, we're a little past bargaining and we're into acceptance, but acceptance means finding the highest and best use of the facility going forward in a way that's both meaningful to Vashon and also has some financial sustainability. So it's going to take us a little while to get our heads around that and to pull more people in as we go to talk about different ideas that we might have.
And Tim, would it be possible to keep the Vashon Community Council involved in this process?
See, why not?
Okay. We do have an affordable housing committee, and you know, in the past, it's been very opportunistic. And although this is a tragic situation for the island, it could be an opportunity for some people for affordable housing, and perhaps, you know, a mixed use facility where you have senior housing and affordable housing, and you have caretakers who can afford to live there. So just some thoughts.
Yes, those are all things that have jumped right up in front of us. Who runs the who is in charge of the housing committee?
Well, that's in transition right now. We just lost our chair, but we should be getting a new chair. In the meantime, you could contact us through the board. You could contact me. Another person on the board who's involved in that would be Mika Oliveri. She's on the board and also works with the Affordable Housing Committee.
Okay, very good.
Okay. And thank you. I understand, you know, when you don't have all the facts, you can't really talk about them. So,
yeah.
But thank you for coming to the meeting and just letting us know that, you know about us, and that you want to keep in touch with us, because that's important. And the Vashon Community Council had some involvement in starting the community care center at when it transitioned from the old Island Manor to the community care center. The community council actually had an active but small role in that. Yeah.
Wonderful history.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for taking the time to join us, and we look forward to working with you to see what we can do on what was a wonderful facility, or what has been. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. I really appreciate it.
Okay, well, you're very welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Are there going to be any questions?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, sure.
So this is Bill Moyer. I'm just wondering, to what extent is this absolutely a done deal? Which I'm never sure I really believe that there's such a thing as a done deal. But and how has the county or state been involved in this process? Or have they been involved to help us avoid this tragic situation?
Great question, Bill. Transforming Age is a nonprofit organization that has affiliations with various communities. They're privately owned and operated. They're, again, like I said, a nonprofit. The interaction that we have with the state at the state level is just based on all of our regulations that we are held to by the Department of Social and Health Services. Those that are on state assistance in the building, we do have interaction and have compliance with those residents and their needs. And then we do have private pay. But the county is facing a significant loss of many other, and the statewide as well, many other long-term care facilities. There's a projection of 20 that are going to be closing in the state of Washington in the next 12 months. So we've had up to 24 in the last 2 years, and there's a projection of another additional 20 that will be closing statewide. And, you know, it really just speaks to our long-term care situation is really in crisis. And there's a lot of work to be done. And I think that really trying to understand how we can make this work for those vulnerable adults is really the crux of the problem. Hopefully that answers your question.
Except for the fact that this is not like another place where people can just go to some other go off island, you know, and be nearby their loved ones or find a different facility. And so what is the state doing about this? And yeah.
Well, the state's response to everyone, you know, the facilities that are projected to close, you've
Yeah.
all heard of the long-term care tax that's starting in January of 2020. That's kind of their response right now. How do we tax in order to provide care? But when you really look at how much the state is paying to cover for people who are in state assistance in a building such as ours, they're only paying 30% of the actual cost. And so owners and operators are actually losing a lot of money and having to cover, and they cannot assess family, they cannot assess the resident to cover that difference. So they're only, you know, receiving 30% of actually what it's costing them to operate. But our number of residents that were on state assistance or Medicaid was very, very little. We just didn't have the demand for it. And that's one thing that I've learned as I've talked to various people, is the assumption from the island is that the facility was 100% full and 100% full of Medicaid residents. And that's just not the way it's been. It's just not the way it is.
Were it 100% full and not 100% full of Medicaid, because that doesn't pay the bills, would it have penciled out had you had all of your rooms filled with, say, other folks who weren't even elders?
Our loan is restricted to healthcare, age restriction, and specifically assisted living apartments. So we don't have the opportunity under our current HUD loan restrictions to bring any other than 62 years and older and providing assisted living and memory care services into the building. So it's a very restrictive loan. The pencil would have been very, very thin. We've run the numbers multiple ways. Part of our problem is that we can't find staff on the island. We can't find staff to come in. And so we're paying triple the amount of wages by hiring agency staff, which then just makes the bottom line even more red. And so that's part of the biggest problem as well, too, is that the staffing just doesn't iron out. And so trying to recruit agency brings on its own plethora of problems. They're not dependable, and they're just not part of the family, and they don't know our residents.
Now, with the loan that you're talking about, that's the $6 million loan or something that we read about in the paper. But I mean, how does that lending agency really so inflexible that they'd rather see you close down and serve no one than make some adjustment on or have some leniency, especially through a pandemic?
So HUD is a very large and very bureaucratic organization, and they're the ones that sets all that regulation. And so the ticker tape and the blue tape to get through to revising that loan is a very lengthy and very tedious process. And it's not a viable request to immediately ask, you know, for that piece of it.
How much of that loan is still owed, and could it be refinanced through some other method that doesn't have those same restrictions?
HUD is the holder of the loan, and so in order to get out from under that, there's the same red tape. It's pretty tight.
But you could pay it off, no?
No, we don't have the cash to pay it off.
But were you able to refinance it? And could it? Why wouldn't it be able to be paid off if there was another source of funding? And how much is left on the loan?
We owe about $6.5 million on the loan, and HUD would have to approve all of that. So HUD holds the keys to every question that you're asking.
And so have sorry, this is my last question. Have you engaged our elected officials in considering your options before this closure?
It's not really a relevant talking point as far as that goes. They're aware of all of the crises that every single facility like ours, we're not unique in this situation. They're aware, and we have access through an organization called Leading Age. They're an advocacy group that works directly with the legislature on exactly these issues. So they're advocating for all long-term care facilities at the legislative level. And obviously it takes time. It takes time, but we're burning through so much debt and red pencil money right now that we cannot afford to keep going.
The short answer there is that there's no agency or fund out there to cover each individual losses on a case-by-case basis. It's just simply not something the state or the local government is involved in right now.
So I feel like Vashon, there's a lot of money on Vashon, and I'm astonished that like Vashon Islanders would rather see this closed than somehow scrape it together. I mean, we know that we have lots of people who have millions of dollars on Vashon. There are people who have billions of dollars on Vashon. And I mean, in a lot of respects, it's like the easiest solution. And I'm not asking you guys at all to do this. I just want to say this as, you know, a community council member. I think this is something that is affecting the affordable housing crisis as well, in the sense that like there's a lot of money here and people are saying, oh no, this horrible crisis, this horrible closing, and yet we're not pulling it together when there really is. I mean, we are a rich community. We aren't like these other communities in the sense that they don't have the private funding. And I feel like there's enough money in this community to do this if we really wanted to buy that building or whatever. It was a private loan situation. And I'm a little bit disappointed in our community that there hasn't been any, you know, right now we're talking about government saving us. And I'm like, we have a lot of money in this community. Yeah, Hillary, I'm happy to listen to what you have to say.
VCC has never, ever penciled out. From when VCC owned it, when, what do you call it? St.
Providence.
Whatever. Providence, yes. I have my problems with the Catholic or any religions, but yeah, it's true. It has never, ever penciled out. You know, and they weren't filled prior to the pandemic. So while the pandemic made it worse, and it's always been by people raising money, and to run an organization that always has to work on paying someone to fundraise, and we're talking millions of fundraising every year, even on this island, it's ridiculous. It's hard and it's almost impossible, and it's not practical either. And you need every organization, nonprofit, profit, has to run in the black at some point, and this one never did.
I think Hillary has hit a really good point there, that even if you bought something tomorrow, just wiped out the debt, you're looking at about half the operational loss. You're still looking at $500,000 a year in subsidy that has to come from somewhere. And while a lot of people have chipped in for the building, a lot of organizations have chipped in to keep people there, to pay the costs, ultimately an organization that does not have the ability to financially sustain itself creates a large drain. And donor fatigue, you name all different things, but at the end, Transforming Age is left holding a very large debt structure, and they just simply can't keep eating the revenue loss or coming back to the community and saying, hey, we need another $1 million, and then next year we need another $1 million, and then next year we need another $1 million. When you start adding up all the needs we have on this island, you start to prioritize your money a little bit. And I think Transforming Age made a tough decision, but they were the one left holding the basket when it finally came time to recognize that the current model of assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing, any combination of those just does not sustainably pay for itself on Vashon.
Well said, Tim.
Are you saying though that if you were running at 100% capacity, that all of the facility was full, that you would be close to that breaking even, or is even that you're going to be in red?
Yeah, it was red before, and we used to run at 100% capacity. And the skilled nursing, you know, that was, you really can't run with more than probably 5% max Medicaid, first of all. And Medicaid is a killer, but otherwise you have to, I mean, I think the memory care is what, $10,000 a month? So who are we talking about that can, that's $120,000 a year. How many people do you know that can afford that? So yes, we have a lot of rich people on the island. There's no question, but we have a lot of people who are not even close to that category. And to ask even the small group of people every year to fork up, you know, 10 people, $100,000 a piece, that's a tall order.
Well, and Hillary, you bring up a really good point, and I have to just give a huge shout out to Ann Atwell, who is our development and fundraising coordinator. She's done a phenomenal job over the last 3.5 years of really bringing the need to the island, and has developed some very strong relationships, and she's done a very good job of bringing in that revenue that we needed in order to offset some of our expenses. So I just want to give a shout out to her. She's not here right now, but I really want to.
She's in another country.
I know. Want to shout out.
It does seem as though the extra problems caused by an inability to get staff are something that has happened over the last couple of years that wasn't a huge issue perhaps until 2017, 2018, and then during COVID. I mean, it feels as though that's the extra problem beyond the fact that it never penciled out, that just makes it impossible to continue, because you literally can't continue if you don't have people to staff the place.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Would you say that's accurate? I mean, that's what I see all over Washington State, all over the country, with care facilities shutting down.
Yeah. What I was told, I'm sorry, Wendy.
Oh, go ahead, Hillary.
What I was told is that 5 years ago, 85% of the staff lived on Vashon.
Yeah.
And then it was 30 now %.
There you go.
So right there is the killer.
And we just lost one of our licensed nurses about 6 months ago. She's been trying for 2 years to buy a house on the island and couldn't afford to do it. And she moved off island, and she was my one licensed nurse. But the long-term care crisis of trying to staff across the nation has really been catapulted about 5 or 6 years ago, with the tech industry really spiking. Kids are going into different industries. They're not going into healthcare, and healthcare is not sexy. And long-term care is really not sexy. It is hard, back-breaking work, and no one wants to really tackle that beast. It's very difficult. So attracting that student coming out of high school that maybe wants to work and earn some extra money while they're going to nursing school or med school, that person doesn't exist. Nursing schools are getting harder and harder to get into. And so fewer and fewer people are graduating even from nursing school. And so they're really starting to scratch their heads to say, what do we need to do to shift the paradigm and get people interested in even becoming nurses, let alone CNAs? So yeah, it's a national crisis.
Yeah.
If you add the fact that we are an island separated by ferries and our burgeoning housing crisis, we have the same problem that everyone else has. We've just concentrated it. So we have it on steroids, and you probably have all seen that housing crisis is threading through the entire nature of life on Vashon right now, and especially when it comes to workforce. There just aren't enough people to fill even the basic jobs on Vashon. And when you start looking at jobs that are require a certain amount of technical proficiency, and there's a lot of competition for those workers, and most of them are not on the island, You just simply cannot compete in that environment right now. And even if you could compete, you would drive your costs so far through the roof that, again, it just creates that unvirtuous cycle.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, no easy solutions, but doesn't mean there aren't solutions.
I would just like to second what Hillary said. I was on the foundation board when VCC was still owned and operated by the community. And every year it was a huge struggle just to get enough money to pay the bills. We had a full-time director, Verna Everett, and that's all she did was work on fundraising. And at the point that Transforming Age came in, it was absolutely clear that VCC could no longer stay open as a community-owned and operated facility. So if Transforming Age hadn't stepped in when they did, we probably would have lost VCC several years ago.
Totally agree.
Wendy, do you have any idea what happens if HUD forecloses on its loan?
I don't. I'm not an expert in the HUD speak or the HUD language. What I do know is that it's probably an 18-month process to really even get in touch with HUD. I know we're working with them and going through all of their loopholes. But right now I don't really know. And that's why I'm super excited about our task force, simply because if we can present to HUD, this is what the island needs. What we know is that they're more receptive to trying to unravel the restrictions that are attached to our loan and refinancing that loan than if we weren't to come up with any solutions. And so that's why we really wanted to get this task force together and just start brainstorming. What does this island need? And there's a lot of different ideas out there, all of which have been mentioned tonight, plus some. So once the committee is ready to start talking and start giving ideas and keeping everyone informed, Tim will be that voice and we'll be able to kind of start getting that information out there.
Okay.
Armin has a question. Armin, could you try to speak? I haven't been able to hear you. You could ask your question in chat. We can't hear you, Armin.
Can't hear still.
He says it's too long to put in chat. Sorry about that, Armin. I don't know what's going on for you.
Feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. Diane has my information. I'm happy to chat with any one of you if you want to call me.
Yeah, and Armin, you're not muted at this point. You're unmuted. So it could be, again, a technical difficulty similar to what Ms. Kleppe was experiencing before. Okay. Well,
while we're waiting,
everybody, those were good questions.
That's it. While we're waiting for trying to get his audio fixed, I had one small correction or refinement. When I talked about the military jets, it wasn't San Juan Islands, it's Whidbey Island, and it's the EA-18G Growler fighter jets. So not San Juan, Whidbey Island, and the Growler jets.
Yeah.
So Armin's asking if the facility can be converted to apartments.
Again, that goes back to our HUD loan. and the restrictions that are placed on that. We're trying to get that unraveled and try to sort that out. So we'll have more on that as we learn more. But right now it's age restricted. You have to be 62 years of age to live there. Plus you have to be receiving assisted living care services. And in order to be eligible for that, you have to have a doctor's note, all of those elements to live there. So it's all tied up right now in the restrictions of HUD.
How does the Vashon situation compare or contrast to other U.S. island communities? If you've looked at that.
I haven't. I don't know of any other island that has long-term care, but I haven't researched it either. Maybe someone else knows that answer, but I don't.
Okay. Well, we'll need to address this issue again, probably several times. Oh, okay. Here's another comment here. Okay.
In the meeting.
I think the larger Armin's question is that there are a lot of possible uses for the facility, but it goes back to working out the loan and other issues like that, and as well as whether they pencil or not.
Okay.
And that's what we're working on. So it's too early to say yes, that'll work, or no, that won't work. Kind of digging into a lot of possibilities.
Are you talking to architects in terms of repurposing the building?
We're exploring all options right now.
Okay.
We haven't gotten down to brass tacks yet, but we're looking at all ideas that are coming in. Tim's fielding a lot. I'm fielding a lot. We're working through the task force. So we're still in the data gathering phase.
Okay. All right. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Okay. And if we can keep providing you with information or questions, and we can keep an open line, that would be great, Tim and Wendy.
Absolutely happy to.
Good. Good.
Absolutely.
Bill, did you have a question? No. Okay. Well, thank you for coming, and thank you all of the participants in the Community Council for attending and participating. Our next meeting will be October 18th, Monday. And so at this time, I would like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
It's always good to see you, Jim.
Yeah, Jim, it's great to see you.